What major changes or trends do you foresee coming in the next decade or two?
Well, I'll give you, with reasonable brevity, the three that I write out of the book. Chapter 17 is now part two, with three chapters, and the parts three of the book is called "The Future of Investment Management," and the three chapters are: number one, the mutualization of the mutual fund industry, and there's no way that at some point other firms will adopt the Vanguard shareholder first strategy. They may not want to, but when costs get driven down enough, when the directors wake up to paying huge fees for bad performance, it will finally happen. And I do tell the story in there of my two big attempts to mutualize. I tried to mutualize Putnam, and I tried to mutualize a subsidiary of IBM that ran their money. And in both cases, I failed. But on the other hand, you're not out until you have three strikes, and that's only two. I believe that the industry will be forced economically to run itself for the fund shareholders and not for management shareholders. That's number one. Number two is the fight to save the S&P 500 index. There are all kinds of forces against it, and it's, in a sense, its own worst enemy. It's so successful that assets are concentrated, and the index funds own very large portions of every company in America and pretty much around the world. And for U.S. companies, Vanguard owns, I think, around 8%. BlackRock owns almost 8%. That's 16. I think I used these numbers earlier. And State Street about 4, just those index funds. And that's 20%. And if you throw in American funds, they probably own 3. And then you go way down from there. But the concentration of governing power, the first issue is the competitive number of competitors. Like, should you own all 7 airlines? It's a very serious attempt to say that no mutual fund, index or otherwise, but it applies mainly to the index fund, can own more than one company in a given industry. I talked about this briefly the other day. And that is a fight that somebody better be making. I'm doing it now myself to say it, because I think by common agreement, the S&P 500 index fund that we started in 1975 was the greatest advance for serving investors in the history of finance. That seems a little broad, but nobody else can think of any other. And so we cannot let that go. But there may be things that have to happen, because the other part of the problem, and that is concentration of voting power. And there's an article by Dr. John Coates, professor of Harvard Law School, who says, do we really want a country where 12 individuals control the entire corporate America? I think he's wrong. It's more like 6 that are going to end up here, and not 12. And he says 12 is just a number he picked out of the air. But a very small number of individuals, the chief executives of big money management firms, are going to be able to run corporate America unless something changes. Something will change. There will be change in governing responsibilities, maybe change in the law. Right now it says that no mutual fund can own more than 10% of any security, voting stock of any company. And but it only applies to the mutual fund, not to the complex. So the law very easy to get around. Which gets me to the third part of the third issue, which is what I call in the book the investment company, the Financial Institutions Act, of 2030, number picked out of the air. And that is the Investment Company Act, is written basically to regulate closed-end investment companies. And it doesn't regulate institutional investors. It regulates mutual funds, and in incremental ways. The mutual funds were never the focus of that act, so there were things that were designed for sort of Procrustean bed. Things that were designed for closed-end funds were applied to open-end funds. And it also relates to, this litany of problems It relates to a mutual fund. Well, this isn't a mutual fund business. It was in 1940. Most people had just one fund. And now people have a lot of funds. The regulatory unit should be the mutual fund complex or the management company, and not the mutual fund itself, in my opinion. So that will be a big change. It's going to happen. All these things are going to happen. And I can't tell you why. I can't tell you how. And I certainly can't tell you when. But I can guarantee you, you younger people in the room who will be here to see it, mark my words.